Hello guys, welcome back to yet another episode of the Accommodation podcast. And today, in this episode, we're going to be talking about things that you should know before coming to Cuba in 2024. So pay attention to today's episode. And if you're new here to the podcast or to the YouTube channel, for those of you guys who are watching this video, subscribe if you want to get more information on Accommodation. We're always trying to give you the best value out there when it comes to traveling to Cuba, right? I have a list of the things that I want to talk about because there are so many of you guys, first of all, that have never visited Cuba before. And if you have already, Cuba is changing all the time, all right? So that's something that you might be considering before coming to Cuba. So the first question is Cuba safe? Or is going to be Cuba safe enough for traveling in 2024? And the answer is, it depends. And let me explain. I want to be very transparent with you guys because depending on what type of trip or travel are you going to get when you come to Cuba, depending on how safe it's going to be. Cuba is a very safe country, but it has been changing during the last couple of years due to the economy, due to the shortage. So people might have a little bit more necessities. So if you come to Cuba, you're going to see even more contrast than normally you could see if you have visited Cuba before, right? So is going to be Cuba safe? Again, depending on what type of travel you get. If you come by yourself and you want to do everything by yourself and you don't know anything about Cuba and you come and you get inside of the neighborhoods and you start like doing crazy stuff, it's not going to be safe at all. And I have to tell you, because if you don't know anything about a country, why are you going to be getting inside of a neighborhood or talking to some, weird or strangers? So if you come by yourself, but with some specialist, it could be a travel advisor, a trip advisor in this case, someone who's going to be telling you this stuff and you might know before coming to Cuba, this is going to be a completely different trip. Because, for example, as a travel or Cuba advisor, I tell my clients, hey, listen, if you want to come to Cuba, pay attention to the details about what kind of trip do you want to get. They say, no, Alex, we want you to give us everything. So we don't want to be like thinking about the currency, or we don't want to be thinking about the stuff that we might need in Cuba, because we know that Cuba is a complicated country. So this is completely different because once you land here in Cuba, you don't have to worry about anything. And most of the times you're going to have an itinerary by professionals, whether it's with alexr.emprende.com or not, right? If you come by hiring or paying someone else who is going to be giving you a lot of information and guiding you through the island, this is going to be very safe because you don't even need to worry about the places that you're going to visit, because everything is going to be on the list, all right? So overall, Cuba, it is safe, but don't do stupid things, all right? And that's for the people who wants to come by yourself, all right? So the other question that I have here is understanding the Cuban currencies. This is a huge topic, and we have been talking about this for years. Accommodation have been creating content for over 4 years now, and the currency in Cuba has been changing a lot. I would say that so many of you guys who have never visited Cuba used to have the memory, or you think that Cuba has the CUC. Forget about the CUC. During the 2019, 2018, Cuba had the CUC, which was replacing the USD. So that was the most common currency that most of the Cuban people and tourists were using in Cuba. So now we are a little bit more complicated when it comes to economy or currency situation. We have the MLC, which is basically digital currency. It's a card that only Cubans can use. Now we also have the euros, the USD, and the CUP. But the CUP is the official currency. That's the only one that most of the time they're going to be using if you want to buy some stuff on the street. By some stuff, I mean, if you want to buy some art, if you want to buy some food, if you want to go to a restaurant, if you want to do this stuff, right? Even if you want to pay a taxi. If you want to know more about that, we have a video right here about how to exchange the money. It's a pretty old video, but there's so many tips that are going to be helping you a lot. Something that I have to tell you in advance. And I know there's so many out there are going to say, hey, Alex, you don't need to say that. But the truth is that if you exchange the money on the street and you have no idea about how to do it, you could get a scam. So my advice is try to do it legally. And if you want to do it because you want to get an exchange rate, watch this video. It's going to be helping you a lot. All right. But overall, again, that's going to be the main currency that you're going to be using in Cuba, which is going to be the CUP, the official Cuban currency, right? Visitor health insurance. This is something that you might need before coming to Cuba, guys. And not only Cuba, if you're traveling, you might have an insurance, but it's completely up to you guys if you want to have your own stuff. We're going to be talking about that later. Accommodation. What should I know before the accommodation in Cuba? Accommodation in Cuba is something that has became very famous because of the Airbnb. Most travelers, they used to come in 2018, for example, they used to stay in the Airbnb, and Cuba was full of visitors, so we were not able to host everyone. But nowadays, you can have TripAdvisor, Expedia, Booking.com, Airbnb, or you could go with private agencies. If you don't know how to reach out to private agencies, let me know in the comments down below, and I'm going to send you a link so you can know exactly which are going to be the best depending on what kind of travel you want to get again. And if you want to come with us, the link is going to be in the description of this video. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast, I'm going to put the link again in the description of this podcast, okay? Just in case. Accommodation, depending on the budget. Airbnb is going to be very cheap. Private boutique hotel, which is what I recommend because of the quality of the stuff, because of the quality of the food, because of the quality of the services, are going to be a little bit more premium. And I would say in between, you could go with Booking.com. But for the American travelers, you're not going to be able to stay in any government places. So forget about Booking.com, because Booking.com and Expedia as well, most of the times they include government hotels. So you're not going to be able to do that. But if you want to stay with a private boutique hotel, we can help you with that. Again, the link is going to be down below. So talking about always stash some cash. This is for solo travelers, basically. If you want to come to Cuba and you want to, travel by yourself, you need to bring a lot of cash. The inflation in Cuba is still growing up. I'm going to put a link down below if you want to know about the inflation in Cuba, how much the exchange rate is on the black market, so you don't get scammed by the people on the street, right? But you need cash because you're going to be using cash all the time. And if you come from the US, this is even more important because you're not going to be able to use credit cards, debit cards, any of them, unless you live in the US, but you stay, I don't know, you have like a credit card from Europe, Canada, who knows, Those might work. Is possible. It's not like for sure, but it's possible, right? So cash is going to be much better. The other day, for example, we had a group of 11 Americans, and one of them, we had a photo shoot, and right before the photo shoot, he was asking me, hey, Alex, I want to look for some pants for the photo shoot. Where should I go? I said, bro, it's not going to be possible. And I don't like saying no to my clients, but the truth is that when it's because I cannot help you. If you are an American and you want to go shopping, you need to use your credit card because we need to use the MLC cards. Again, watch the rest of the videos where you can learn about the currency in Cuba. So he was like, what should I do? And I said, okay, you have two options. We can do the photo shoot with that one that you're already using, which is which is awesome. Or we can go to some private places. But we had no time. We were running out of time. So at the end, it was great. But that's another option. As an American, if you come to Cuba, you can always purchase some stuff, items, clothing from the private, which is going to be even better because you're going to be supporting the Cuban people, right? So bring cash, bring your medications. This is something very important. This is something very important, not only for you, but for the people. Again, these a group of Americans, they brought a lot of things to give away in Cuba. And most of the stuff were medicine, basically. So if you want to, I don't know, if you have some sickness, or that you're, I don't know, some stomach problem, whatever, you might bring some medication. And of course, besides your sickness and besides the basic, bring aspirin, acetaminophen. I don't know how to say acetaminophen in English, but you probably from hearing, you know what I'm talking about. So this is something that is going to be preventing like some problems that you don't want to have in Cuba. And something that you might know in advance is that don't drink the tap water in Cuba. You're going to get diarrhea. You're not ready for it. Although some people have done that before and they're like, I'm a rock. But you don't want to be like, on the middle of the street having this stomach problem. The other thing that I want to talk about is the food in Cuba. The food in Cuba is relative. Like, what type of food do you want to try? If you want to try what locals eat, it's not going to be ropa vieja, it's not going to be lobster, although that's a very famous Cuban dish. Ropa vieja, pork, lobster, and you can get those if you go to their private restaurants. If you go to some government places, it's going to be hard to find. And the same with if you want to get a coffee and you want to get to a lobby of the place. If it's not included, you need to use credit cards. So it's not going to be possible. I recommend you guys to go to some private restaurant. I don't want to mention any here because there are so many of them that are pretty good. But for example, if you want to try Cuban food, there are tons of places that you're going to find. Now, if you want to go for more international food or more like specific type of food, go to Playa, Miramar, Centro Havana. Those places where you can find like very envedado as well. And actually, I made a video about a restaurant that they have really good food, Cuban and international. The name is El Grillo, and you can watch it here on the channel. All right. So the other one is, for example, when it comes to souvenirs, I want to buy some souvenirs in Cuba. Where should I go? One of the most famous streets, which is Obispo, all right? It's full of souvenirs, but you shouldn't buy there. And the reason is because it's going to be super expensive. If you don't think about money, go and buy right there. But we have Almacenes de San Jose, which is a huge, like an old factory full of souvenirs, and is going to be a little bit more affordable, right? That's another option. So take a note of that place, and I shouldn't buy from Obispo Street, right? Obispo Street is one of the most famous, I would say the most famous street that you're going to find in the old town. So once you head there, you're going to see why. But yeah, you should buy, if you find like affordable options, you could buy some items like these magnets to put on the freezer, or you can buy some cigars, or you can buy some rums if you want to buy those to bring to your family, although you might not drink it or smoke it by yourself. The next topic is you probably need a tourist visa, no matter where you're coming from. United States, Canada, Poland, Europe in general, you need visa to visit Cuba. If you don't need it, welcome. But check before coming to Cuba, check if you're going to need visa. Just in case you might need one, you can get it online before your trip, or you can get it at the airport. The price is going to vary, but depending on where you're coming from. It's very easy. I mean, no matter if you need it or not, it's going to be very easy. So, actually, we have another podcast where we're talking about that. If you want to check it out again, you should actually check out all the podcasts that we have recorded for you guys, because it's going to be providing you more value and information. Although I have to tell you in advance that we are preparing or getting ready an online course that is going to be basically this format, but teaching you specifically the stuff that you might need for your trip. So economy, culture, economy, I mean the the currency in Cuba, culture, how Cuba works as a system, why is Cuba communist, the stuff that you might avoid, what you should talk about in Cuba, things that you are going to find that no one else is going to find. I mean, it's going to be full of information. So stay tuned for that because it's coming. Cuba travel itinerary. If you come to Cuba, this is basically, I put this because it was like plan ahead. This is something that I'm always talking about. Because if you don't plan ahead, Cuba is a very complicated country. And if you don't know what you're going to do, then go and hire a professional. But if you are going to do everything by yourself, try to plan ahead, try to build an itinerary about the stuff, the places, where you're going to get, what you're going to buy, etc., etc., etc. This is something that I highly recommend you to do if you don't want to spend a lot and waste a lot of time. Not only spend, but waste a lot of time, because Cuba changes like this. And sometimes you go, you even have an itinerary with a place, and you go to that place and the place is closed because nobody knows. But on Google it says that it's open. No, it's closed. But only professionals do that. I know that. So internet works in Cuba. This is something that I wanted to mention, basically because 5, 6, I would say probably 8 years ago, we only had Wi-Fi. And many people think that if you come to Cuba, you got to go to the Wi-Fi park. You have to purchase the card because, I don't know, let's say that you visited Cuba before once in your life and you lived that experience, but it's no longer like that. In Cuba, we have data, actually, and it's easy. You go to Atexa, which is the only and the main telecommunication company that we have. You purchase a SIM card, and then you can put internet. How much? Depending on how much internet you want to get. The SIM card is going to be 1,000 pesos, 1,000 pesos in CUP. Now, if you want to get another one, it might be over 30 MLC or dollars in this case. I had a couple of clients, again, that we were doing a photo shoot and they were looking for a SIM card. We went to Atexa and they had no SIM cards, because even like when it comes to SIM cards, even like that, we have shortages. So they were like people outside trying to resell them, but that's not legal. I shouldn't recommend you guys to actually, I don't recommend you guys to buy anything on the street, even the SIM card, because you don't know, right? It could be a scam. Now, sure, urban taxis in Cuba. If you don't want to spend a lot of money and you want to, live the local life, you can share the urban taxi. The urban taxi is what we call los almendrones, which are the old cars, not the classic ones, but the old cars that they're in very bad conditions, but that's what local use. They all share the same taxi and the price is the same. I mean, by sharing is that you're going to have someone next to you, but the price, you have to pay your price. Now, the price depends on the destination they're going. And nowadays, at the moment of this video, the price of a car could be 100 or 150 pesos, or even 200 or 250 pesos, depending on the distance, all right? But if you want to rent a car, if you want to, rent a taxi or personal driver, we can do that for you. So you don't have to worry about spending or wasting time by thinking how to move in Cuba again. Cuba has changed, but we don't know what's going to happen in 2024. So this is basically like an overall of the stuff that you might know before to Cuba. In December, things could change. In January, things could change. And we're going to try to keep you updated when it comes to, give you news about Cuba. Although we're not a news channel, but on the podcast, we provide you value. That's what we want you to know before coming to Cuba. If something changes, the flights. Oh, wow. I forgot talking about the flights. The flights are something that you might, consider like taking a look before coming to Cuba, because during the last couple of months, things have changed a lot. There are so many airlines from the US specifically that they have canceled all the flights from Miami. So you gotta go to some other cities and then come to Cuba. And if you want to visit Cuba, go to check the links down below. Visit alexr.emprende.com. We're going to be taking care of you 100% in Cuba. Everything, or almost everything, is going to be included in our packages. Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure having you here and see all your smiling faces. Ciao, pescado with a picadillo.